Hello, what's up? Today we have a special guest. We have Christal Brown with us. I got to meet Christal a few years ago at a Middlebury leadership camp. And from the start, I knew she had sort of like that touch. There's some people that you meet and then just they stick out. And for many years, I've followed up, I've checked in with her, and I'm really privileged to have you join us. She's an artist, an educator, a coach, an owner, and she's working right now with Steps and Stages coaching. Really excited to have you, Christal, and please let us know a little bit about what you're doing currently. You're taking a sabbatical year. Really happy to introduce you to our community.
Hey, Milton, first of all, thank you for having me. I mean, we have to really recognize that in all the things that we think we're doing as business, it's really about building relationships. And the fact that you are building this organization, this platform, and I can be of service, or that you even thought that my talents and gifts would help to enhance your mission, are really near and dear to my heart. So thank you for having me. So like Milton said, I'm a lot of things. I do a lot of things. I'm someone's mother. I'm an artist. I'm an educator. I'm a professor. And I'm currently the chief visioning officer at Steps and Stages Coaching, Facilitation, and Consulting, which is really a hybrid of my brain and my heart in the world. So for many years, I've been an artist and a dancer. And in the education part of that, I've been able to really teach people through movement how to connect with the strongest and most valuable parts of themselves. And in the coaching realm, I wanted to really understand how that the years of teaching and the years of artistry and the desire to really share and connect with people would allow me to put those things into action, whether people were in a dance studio with me or not. And so, like Milton said, we met at Midcore, which is an entrepreneurship and innovation program where I spent many years teaching and then began directing. And I also understood that entrepreneurship and artistry were a very similar kind of structure, right? So in artistry is about thinking and imagining what we want to bring to fruition. And entrepreneurship is about creating more ways to live a freer, fuller life. And so when you put those things together, it's actually just what I do. And many times people are looking for that intersection. So I was able to use my intuition and my gifts and my talents and my trajectory, my professional career, to then bounce into this coaching realm, which is giving me so much life right now.
Yeah, sorry, I almost interrupted you. It's just when you were saying that, it was like my unconscious mind just like blurting out. I love that entrepreneurship and creative, like sort of artistry piece, because I think oftentimes we have this perception, and it might have some sound backing in the idea that creatives tend to be sort of like up in the air, not sort of grounded. Whereas entrepreneurs, the market will let you know if you're up in the air and not really grounded. But the idea you pair them together and that your coaching provides the insights, I think is really an important thing. And I think Move Emotion, frankly, our role is really small. It's just connecting sort of the dots and hopefully getting the artists to join with people who can help them to move their careers forward. And I think your perspective as a creative and as a pragmatic person is something that they'll really appreciate. So we're going to discuss today your idea of vision and the importance of dream building. So tell us a little bit about what that is, and then we'll take a step back. So just so people know, what we'll do in this conversation is we'll get to hear about the person that's behind these works. But first, we'll hear a little bit about what she's doing, and then we'll learn about Christal Brown as a person, as a being.
Awesome. So Milton, right now, what we're thinking about is dream building, right? And so dream building, like you just said, for many people, they think creatives are up in the air, and then there's a pragmatic part that actually blends the two together. But really, we're all dreaming at every moment of the day, right? We have this implicit gift of imagination, which is one of our primary mental faculties, and we can use it to imagine the good, or we can use it to imagine the not so good, right? And so when we get stuck in cycles, we're either producing the life we love, or we're producing something that's falling kind of short. And so what I'm proposing and what I'm trained in is a methodology called dream building, which is created by a woman named Mary Morrissey at the Brave Thinking Institute, is that everything, and we know this from psychology, we know this from metaphysics, everything is created twice. This platform we're talking to each other on is created twice. It existed somewhere in someone's mind before it became a thing that we're using, right? And so when we start to think about our life as the same generative idea of what we're building, then our dreams are not just lofty things that are in the sky. They are the things that we are building day by day, moment by moment. We're putting the pieces of the intuition, of the imagination together, taking a step forward and arriving at the next stage of our development. Right? And so when we think of it that way, it's not just this imaginary, all these dreamers. It's about putting the rubber to the road and finding a structure to live out the things that are in our head, the same way Steve Jobs thought of an iPhone, and now we all have an iPhone.
I love that. And I think one of the things, you mentioned Steve Jobs, and at Midcore, we had one of the founders of Netflix. And we, it's really easy for people to explain away, well, that's just them, that they have that power, they can create something in their mind. And then, is there something that might be a precondition for us to sort of get to that point where our visions actually might materialize? I guess my question is, can it be general? And I guess, how do we tap into that?
Let's tap into it by thinking about what we call the results formula, right? So let's be clear. Your thoughts are going to yield something. They're going to be your feelings. Your feelings are going to yield something else. That's going to be your actions. Your actions are going to yield something else. It's called a result. And that result is going to turn into your life. So it's all going to start with how we think and what we think about, how we think about ourselves, what we think about the people we're interacting with. A lot of times we say when you want to grow, you actually don't need to talk to the people who you think know you best, which is what you're inclined to do. You might want to pitch your new idea about yourself to a stranger and see if they believe it, because that's going to give you a more authentic reflection of your future rather than your past. Right. And so when we're talking to people, I can remember distinctly the first time I introduced myself to someone as a life coach, and they thought nothing of it. They were like, "Oh yeah, weren't you?" And I looked at a friend who was with me after that small interaction was over, and I said, "Did you hear what I just said?" And she was like, "Yeah, it's real." And I was like, "Oh, it's real, right?" And so it was the first time that I had claimed a new identity for myself. And when we're claiming new identities, it's not really about the certification or the education. It's about the courage to take the step into a reality we haven't known yet. And sometimes when we're on the edge of that reality we haven't known yet, we just call that fear.
That's true. Fear. And as I mentioned, we're going to take a little bit of a step back, and not a step back, but more of a step deeper into learning about your identity. How did Christal Brown get to where you are, where you own, who you are in many ways? I was saying to Christal behind the scenes that one of the things I noticed about her is she has such like this presence, that she really feels comfortable in her own skin. And how do you get to be where you are in that sense? What was the journey like? Tell us a little bit about, your trajectory to where you are now.
I'm a little girl on the inside. On the inside, everyone should be very clear that I'm a little girl from a small town and that no one knows about, right? So
where is that?
That's in North Carolina, right? And so it's not a recognizable place. When I say it, people never go, "Oh yeah, I know that place." It's really in the state of North Carolina, where a lot of people stop to get a really good barbecue sandwich on their way to the beach, right? And so from a place where it's not really on the map for a lot of things, but there have been some really amazing people who have come out of there. There have been jazz greats like Maceo Parker. There have been basketball players like Brandon Ingram, right? So there's all these ways that something beautiful continues to come out of this small place. And what I know about that is that I grew up just like most young girls, trying to figure out if I was pretty enough, trying to figure out if I was smart enough, and often being put in situations where my identity was challenged by my intuition. Right. So when I say that, in a real tactile sense, I was small in the second grade. I was a young woman who integrated a lot of what they called AG classes, or academically gifted. And it wasn't because I was smarter than anyone else. It was really because my mother was a kind of political social advocate. And so she just kept pushing until the door was opened. And then here I went going through the door, but it meant that I had this responsibility to do something or to make good on the work she had already done. Right. And so when I started to understand, maybe high school, college, that all of the things that I was doing were kind of pre-manufactured to continue a legacy that my mother and father had built. My father lost both his legs in Vietnam. My mother never graduated from college. I'm the first gen in my family to go to college and graduate, my nuclear family. And so that was really a lot of pressure to do and be something. Right. And so in the dancing, what I found was a way to do and be something. I actually started dancing because I got dropped off at the wrong place in a carpool. It was not the story of, Mommy, I want to be a ballerina. Had nothing to do with that. My mother wanted me to play the piano. And I got so sick of taking piano lessons that I was looking for a way out. And my best friend's mom dropped me off at the wrong place. And I ended up watching my best friend take a ballet class. And I was like, please let me do this instead of playing the piano. And that's how my dance career was born. And so I realized through the dancing that there was some way that I could touch people beyond the achievement of doing something, right? So it was more of a spiritual connection. And so that's what took me into the dance field. And I went to college. My undergraduate career was for dance and business because I thought I was going to go back to my hometown and be the first Black dance teacher. And when I got ready to graduate, my senior year, my father died, and it changed all of my plans. And so then I got pushed out the door with an undergraduate degree in performance rather than a teaching certification. And my professors at the time were like, we think you can do this thing. And I hadn't believed in myself in that way. And so my entire dance career was about me cultivating a belief in myself that I was good enough to actually be a professional dancer. I knew I had all these other skills. And so I leveraged these other skills, like we talk about, in terms of entrepreneurship and being a creative artist. I leveraged my logistical skills, my admin skills to be in the room with amazing mentors and dreamers who believed in me in many different areas of my life. And so that's what really opened the door and gave me the confidence to keep dancing. And as I kept pursuing, as I kept saying yes to the doors that were opening, my career just kept unfolding. And I started to believe in something that was bigger than me. And it wasn't about the dancing. It was about me being in rooms that would open doors for other people, similar to the way my mother was pushing doors open for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm hearing an echo. Can you hear an echo from
No, I don't hear
it. Okay. So I'll just move on then. Let me see. I was just saying I should take out the. Okay. So the idea of leveraging skills into the art is something that seems to have started very early on, and now I guess is something you're promoting or helping people to build. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those skills that you've recognized are really valuable are?
Yeah. So, one of the things that you're talking about being comfortable in my skin comes from a 20-year career on stage. The scrutiny of putting yourself on stage in front of strangers will build a pretty tough skin. Right. So, and the training to be a dancer also builds a tough skin. You're basically showing up every day at the mercy of someone else's imagination and having to twist and contort yourself into the best version of their dream. Right. Yeah. And so when you're doing that, there's a way that sometimes people are losing some of themselves because they're trying to make themselves into someone else's dream. But the skill of that is being able to translate, to be able to listen so clearly to someone else's vision that you can digest it and make it your own. It's being able to take on something and still not lose a part of your identity so that at the end of the day, you're able to synthesize what you've become, who you are, and what you would like to make, right? So that transformation factor, that way that we really call it genius. Because if we think about the definition of genius, it's really the thing that we see in babies, right? So from the time a baby is born till they're about 24 months old, they're taking in so much information in several different modalities. They're tasting everything, they're touching everything, they're figuring out how to move. They don't have a language, they're creating a language for themselves to get their needs met. And so when they're synthesizing information in that way, we go, oh my God, this baby's so smart. This baby's learning things so fast. We all have that capacity to keep doing that. But what happens is that we narrow the modalities of which we use. We then start to pare it down that we only read, we don't sing. We only dance, we don't play the guitar. I'm one of these type of people, not those type of people. So we start to limit the way that we see the world and interact with it, which limits the capacity of our genius, right? And so we're really just taking an accounting all the time. What we're trying to do is take an accounting of the things that we know to be true and the skill that we're building so that we can synthesize them into something we really would love.
I think there's so much in that I hope we'll, people need to be able to follow Christal Brown in her social media. We'll make sure that everybody has access to this because there's a lot behind that, I'm sure. And one of the things that I noticed as well that you were saying is from, I guess, even for how you started to answer the question about who you are is that self-awareness piece. And it's talked about quite a bit, but a lot of people, I think, might be so caught up in their own sort of life that they're not aware of how they're, sort of, I guess, the impact that they're having on other people, but also what's going on inside of them. Right. What have you found, I think, helpful in that journey towards self-awareness that then allows you to sort of, I guess, monitor or change your behavior?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Milton, because I think self-awareness is one of those things that continues to grow as we're able to have new experiences of ourselves. And what is really resonant for me is that a lot of people don't ever get a different perspective of themselves. And, we talked about this earlier, right? If we want to talk about and see ourselves from a different perspective, sometimes we have to change the circle of people that we're with. Sometimes we have to step outside our comfort zone, right? Your comfort zone is not so comfortable, really. It's just where you've been, so you think it's okay. But when we step out of that and we go past that barrier of fear, which is the reality we haven't known yet, when we get past that and we're able to look back on where we've been and where we would like to go, it gives space for the vision. It gives space to be and grow and do new things. So for me, it started with leaving my small town and going to a summer dance program. And that changed my world. After that, I had friends who were in Oregon that I talked to every other day. It was a bigger world for me. And knowing that this thing called dance was affording me a bigger world kept me dancing. Again, it wasn't because it was my first love. It was about what the thing dance was giving me. I've seen the world because of dance. I have passport stamps because of dancing, not because I just said, oh, I want to see the world. I'm going to buy a plane ticket. No, I've only seen the world because most of the time I'm supposed to be at a theater doing someone else's vision, right? And so that has been an amazing product of just saying yes. And so when I think back to my small vision of going to college, getting a degree in dance, getting a minor in business, opening up a small dance studio in my hometown, and what my life has become, it really just goes to the statement that we never really see our full capacity unless we get outside of ourselves, right? And so have I failed? Yes, I failed many times, but I haven't let the failures keep me so far from my faith that I don't get back up again. And so, we mentioned this behind the scenes too, that, I try not to let my problems outweigh my purpose. And so when I wake up every day, I'm thinking, what can I do today from where I am with what I have that's going to get me further along the road of what I love? And what I really love is people. I really love to be with people, in communion with people, talking to people, and really getting to the meat of what makes them tick and what's going to allow them to live their most expansive and love-filled life.
Jesus, I'm looking at and hearing you. It's just such an amazing thing to have somebody who had. I think one of the things that makes you special is that you have that wide view, but also you've kept that idea of being a small town person and the idea of that inner journey and there's a sense of gratitude also of like the role that dance has played in your life. And I think that leads me to thinking about you talk a lot about not being a victim and the idea of sort of owning your situation and wherever it is, whatever it is. Can you tell us a little bit about why you are so strong about that piece?
Yeah.
So the idea of like owning ownership of whatever it is that your life has given you, and also not blaming it because you could have easily turned it into something different.
Yeah. You know, I think, Milton, I was talking to a client the other day, and we were talking about the difference between being the narrator and a character. And so
Mhm.
if I'm a character, or like you're saying, the word we use sometimes is victim, then someone else is writing
Mhm.
my story. But the moment
Mhm.
I'm able to become the narrator, I'm able to tell the story in the way that I would like it to end, or that I would like it to
Mhm.
continue to go. And so my story has a lot of ups and downs, you know, like this is not, you know, by no means am I perfect over here, right? And, you know, there are many people who have said to me out loud, they go, you know, you just live such a charmed life. And I laugh on the inside. I know what they mean. They mean that whatever happens to me, I translate it into a positive, right? Like I
Yeah.
know that I'm a container, and most containers we see are plastic. So I work from the methodology of, can I recycle this? Can I
Ah,
recycle this bad moment into
I
something
like
that's
that.
better, right? So I'm trying to be the earth conscious in that way of recycling the bad
That's
moment.
awesome.
But the thing, you know, when we get really tactile about the things that I've learned or done or gone through, you know, I'm almost 42. I have had a child. I'm someone's mother. I have had a canceled wedding. I have been a mother on welfare in New York City. I have created projects and companies with no money. I have been the first person in my family to graduate from college. I have provided for my family for, you know, quite a lot. All of the things that come along with being a Black woman in America, right?
Mhm.
That might sound like a stereotype, but they really are about the structures that I have to
Mhm.
navigate, or I have had to navigate to be here and feel this much freedom in my own skin, right? And so
Mhm.
the idea that I have told the story in my way, I have told the story not as a single mother, but as a parent who is single. I have told the story with the word that is my priority in front, rather than the demarcation of lack that people would have me kind of buy into first. My singlehood has
Yeah.
nothing to do with my parenting. My parenting has everything to do with some of the ways that I choose to be single, right? So my
Mhm.
child becomes more of the priority. And the idea that we are creating and generating these ideas of ourselves, right? I'm imagining every day who I want to be and stepping into that, rather than being told from the world what I'm capable of, who I am, what I should be doing, what my demeanor should be, because I look like this, what should happen to me. Like, you know, all of those have already been debunked. I've been a professional dancer for 20 years. I'm 160 pounds. I'm 5'3", and I have the shape of an athlete, not a dancer. Right? So, you know, so all of these things that are supposed to be traditional or demarcations, or the kind of structures of how things work, have already kind of been dismantled. And so I continue to try to work from that methodology, from that mental space, from that heart space of the structure is not the strategy, right? And so there is a strategy that we're creating, but it doesn't have to be about this thing that is called success, that's dictated or written by someone else. I get to be the narrator.
That's awesome. And I think so. I do hear an echo. I feel like this. Can you guys still hear me? Can you hear me
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Good. I think that'll sound better. So this narrator piece, I think, is a good segue into the idea of writing your vision. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about, what that entails, and then we can walk into the DreamWorks or
Yeah.
the dream building part of the piece. Tell us a little bit about why vision is important and how we
Well,
can draft
you
it.
know, vision is important, Milton, because without a vision, we don't know where we're going, right? We just don't have a big picture view of the thing we really want. And it's a hard question. You can ask people all day, what would you love? What do you want? And they actually may not give you the answer of what they would love or what they want. They may tell you what they think is possible. They may tell you what they think they're capable of, and they might tell you what's available to them. But for someone to really have the courage to tell you what they would love takes a whole different type of courage. And that courage is usually bolstered or sustained by having a bigger vision. So, there are a lot of different spiritual texts that talk about vision. Biblically, it says the man
Yeah.
without a vision perishes, right? So
Right.
when we think about that, it really means that if I can't imagine it, if I can't see it for myself, there's nothing spurring me on to do the work, right? And so
Yeah.
when we have vision, when we create and blueprint and design a vision, it keeps us from living a life by default. It keeps us actually living a life of design that we can participate in fully and wholly and reap the rewards and the results and even the failures of that and still be okay to keep moving forward. So without a vision, I'm waking up every day and I'm doing what's in front of me, but I don't know where those steps are leading me, right? It's like picking up your GPS and you don't even know the coordinates, right? You're just following along without having a destination in mind, but with a vision, you have a what. You might not always know the how. The step by step may not be there, but the what is in the forefront and you're reaching towards that with everything you do.
Okay, and as we're talking about getting feedback from the outside world, where sometimes it's good where we don't speak to people who are, for example, in our circle, but we speak to somebody who's outside of our circle to give us new feedback. Or I guess my question is going to go into how much feedback should we have from the outside world in forming this vision, or is it something that's internal, purpose driven? What's that process like?
That's a really interesting question because it really, it depends so much on how strong you believe in your own belief, right? And so if I said, when I said to my mother years ago, I'm going to go to college for dance, her immediate reaction was, okay, and what else?
Yeah.
Now, her fear prompted her to ask me that question because she had never seen anyone in our family or known a professional dancer. What she did know is that my dance teacher had a business of her own, and that was the structure that she could see success in. So that's what she kind of pushed me or encouraged me to do. But if I had listened to her and maybe only gone to school for business and not been able to synthesize her feedback, right? Because this is the thing. I knew in that moment, I don't know how I knew, but I knew in that moment that what she was saying was, you need a backup plan. And what I didn't want to do was fall victim to only the backup plan. So I made a hybrid, right? Okay, I'm going to go to school for dance and business. And that served me not for the original dream that I thought was success, but in the rest of my life, right? It trained me in a different way to see structure, to see choreography and spreadsheets as the same type of creative endeavor, right? To write a business plan the same way I would write a grant proposal, right? And so it gave me a different set of skills. So when I was talking to my professors, when I was in college and I was about to graduate, and they could see something that I couldn't see, they were like, we really think you probably could be a performer. And I was like, I can't even do a split. I can't be a professional dancer, blah, 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 right? I was like, what is wrong with these people? But lo and behold, here we are. The way that I think people have the courage to either hear or not hear is based on their belief in their own vision, right? And so my vision, Milton, was to go back to my hometown and be the first Black dance teacher. That vision multiplied to the point where I became the first African-American female to be tenured at Middlebury College. So it was the same dream. It was just on a bigger scale and a little further away, right? So the way that we have to really understand our visioning process and our dream building process is that we're going to get what we ask for or something greater. And trusting in that methodology, trusting in that reach, trusting in that yes and is what keeps us being able to synthesize and hear from what may feel like a naysayer or a critique that we may be able to synthesize into something really crucial for our development.
That's awesome. I think one of the themes that stuck with me from that mid-core program was the idea of building within limitations. So there are limitations to our, perhaps to our life, to our dreams. Sure, our visions also consider those limitations, like for example, those critiques that we can synthesize into, you created this hybrid, for example, as you were growing up. How do we think about limitations in our visions?
Yeah. So artists know this really well, right? Yeah. So there's never going to be enough time. There's never going to be enough money. There's never going to be, right? There's always something that's limiting in the structure that we're trying to create. And so even when I teach entrepreneurship, for me, it's the same as teaching a choreography class. I'm giving people a set number of parameters and I'm asking them within the structure of what I've given you, how creative can you be? How can you break the rules of the structure in a way that no one's broken them before, that gives everyone a new perspective? And so, when I have to make a dance in 2 weeks, when someone flies me to their college or their dance company and says, we got 2 weeks, we're going to pay for you to be here. Can you make a dance and then leave? Yes, I have to figure that out. But the way that I figure that out is by craft, not necessarily by inspiration. And we have to know the difference as artists. We have to be able to know when we're inspired by something or when we're crafting something or when we can do both. But usually the parameter is going to push us towards a synthesis of craft and innovation and inspiration in the medium that we're using, right? Because we're not going to get a result because if we don't get the result, a lot of times that means you're not going to get paid, right? Like, how are you going to get the thing done? And you have to really create some structures and parameters for yourself to know how you work with certain parts of the time, of the resources, of the place, so that you can really synthesize your gift and make a result that's going to be impactful for your art and the people involved.
Yeah, I think as the first year in my entrepreneurship piece, one of the hardest pieces sort of trying to bring my visions and my emotions into something that I'm actually doing. And sometimes, sort of doing that within the context of limitations of, financial uncertainty, all of these things, I guess, that are challenging. When we're creating visions and we're sort of developing ourselves, I wonder what is the most helpful for somebody, at that stage. Should we have those sort of backup plans? Pardon if I'm sort of redundant. I guess what I'm trying to come up with is for the artists, for example, that we've helped. Sometimes they're stuck on a job that they don't like, but they're extremely talented. But it's really hard to leave the job, because they're how do I live? So I guess my question is, how do you, if perhaps you haven't been inspired, I guess, with this solution, I guess, how do you come, how do you create those realities there? Or does that make sense, that question?
Yeah. One of the things that I really love about dream building is that it asks, what is your vocari?
Yeah.
And it's different than the word vocation, because usually vocation people translate into what they trade their time for money, right? What do I do? What do I produce? And your vocari is really, how do you use your gifts and talents? And so it's a really amazing story. This woman named Julia James, who was in one of our first Dream Building for Artists cohorts. And she is a writer. And so in the time of the course, she actually grew in confidence to say, I am a writer, right? So she grew in that. And so she had been doing some kind of data analysis for a company that does something in the medical industry. And so what she did after the course is that she actually took a promotion or applied for a position in her current job as a medical writer rather than the data analysis, right? So she was able to start practicing her skill and her gift in a different way that then allowed her to practice writing all the time,
That's
right? And
awesome.
so sometimes we're figuring out, how can we do this or that, but it's a yes and,
Love
right?
that.
So it wasn't about, when I really started my career as a professional dancer, for me, it was never about being on stage. It was about the people who I got to be around. And when I
Mhm.
started my company, it was about the women who I could give a place on the stage to, not me putting my name on the company. So
That's
it was always about something that was leveraging, right? It was always about a gift or a talent. I have a gift for community. I have a gift for growing people. I have a gift for inspiration and translating things into tangible, lessons for people. And that was the vehicle for me to be able to do that, that was going to impact the lives of the women who were in my company, later on the men who were in my company, the students who were in my class. So the ways that we are translating and seeing
Yeah.
the use of the gift and talent we have in any type of what may seem like mundane day job is actually
Yeah.
giving us a clue about the evolution of that particular gift.
Okay, that's awesome. It's really I love it because you break away also from the duality of thinking that you need to quit this in order to do that, and then you also get rid of the excuse of like the reason why I'm not doing the art or the craft piece is because of this thing. But you can sort of mix those worlds, and one of the things that I saw that you're thinking beyond the just like those sort of like surface level problems, or you're thinking about purpose and the idea of like why you actually want to do what you're setting out to do, the vision. So, for example, your company, and you said you're here to lift other people. How do we? How does purpose fit into the idea of vision, and how can we tap into our own purpose?
Yeah, that's a great question. Vision is the what,
Hmm.
and the purpose is the fuel to keep going.
Hmm.
Right. So the purpose is somehow woven as the foundation of the vision, because the vision can change. You can have
Right.
multiple visions, right? The vision can
Hmm.
evolve. The purpose is going to keep driving the vision maker, right?
Hmm.
So one of my core values and one of the things that I feel like is one of my purposes in the world is to love people.
Hmm.
And that's going to happen
Yeah.
in many different ways.
Hmm.
Right? It's going to happen in many different ways, in many different visions. It's going to inspire or change people or impact people in different ways. But I also have to know that that's my purpose. That's something that I love to do. It's something that's intrinsically woven into everything I do, but it's not perfect. Purposes are not meant to be perfect. They're meant to be drivers and fuel for you to get to your highest good.
Hmm.
So I had to, it's been probably about 2 months ago now, but I had the real epiphany that, I love to love people, but there is something that my love is lacking, and my love lacks compassion, but it only shows up for the people who are closest to me. It only shows up in that lack for the people who are my family, my children, my best. That lack of compassion only shows up for people who are close to me. It doesn't show up for strangers. It doesn't show up for clients. It doesn't show up for students. It doesn't show up in that way, because with them, I'm really open and here to listen. But again, it goes back to that construct of
Well,
when we think we know someone, we love them or we act with them or we participate with them out of a pattern that we think is the most effective. And so what I've learned is that
yeah.
in all the ways that my life has impacted other people, when it comes to the people who are closest to me, when I want to love them, I want to get it done. I don't
Yeah.
want to wait. I don't want to listen. I just want to fix it right then because I love them so much. But really, what they need from me a lot of the times is the pausing, the listening, the processing, the visioning. And I'm just really grappling with how to stop myself from fixing the people I love the most. and jumping past what they really need to go through in order to get to the realization or the revelation of themselves for themselves.
That's awesome. And I think that also comes into that self-awareness piece that we've discussed. Let's talk now about dream builders in your coaching. I think, can you help, how do you help people to build their dreams and to gain that self-awareness and sort of move into that better relationships, better life, better creative soul? Like, how does that look? What does that look like?
Well, it takes a lot of different forms, Milton. I have a private clientele who I see one-on-one. And then we have this Dream Builder series, Dream Building for Artists, Dream Building for Educators, Dream Building for Believers. And those three communities are really built because of where I feel like my life falls in some big buckets, right? I'm an artist. I've been an artist for a long time. I've been an educator from private institutions, K-12 into collegiate. And I have a really strong faith community, right? So I really work a lot in terms of spirituality and things like that. So I kind of wanted to tailor these 4 pillars of dream building for those particular audiences. And so the way that works is we start with, what would you love? That is the base question. It's not, what do you want to do? Which grant do you want to apply for? Which record label do you want to be signed to? It's, what would you love in 4 facets of your life? And because whether you're making the art or not, you're still living a life. You're still creating a life. And so we want to make sure first, baseline, that we have all the components of what we're doing in life together. And then we have a vision for where we want those components to be and rise to the level of. And then we start to integrate the piece of blueprinting and being very specific about what we want to do. Because many artists, because we're visionaries, we're so grandiose in our thoughts, but the details are sometimes lacking. It's okay. It'll all work out, right? And that is true, but it may not work out on the timeline that makes you feel successful. So we really try to draw in and think about a phase that we call blueprinting, which is where we're going to put some numbers, we're going to put some time, we're going to put a calendar together. And one of those principles for blueprinting that I love to share with people is that we use our calendar as an organizing principle for our energy. So when we look at our schedule, it's not about how much we can put on it or fit into it. It's about how much energy we can channel through the day to get the impact and the result that we want later, right? And so really getting refined about how we think about our value as human beings, the value of the thing we're trying to do, whether that be educate, impact, build your faith, and then how we then turn that blueprint into a practical plan that we can see results from that will change our thinking by the practice of doing.
I love that you brought the idea of time into this conversation, because all of this falls into a timeline and our life is finite. And the idea of, dreams and limitations, we should actually bring it down into into our calendars. And how do you think about, is it, weekly, monthly, day by day? How do you think about how you put your energy into these calendars? Is it, what compartments or what other insights about time do you recommend there?
Most of the time with my dream building clients, I think of 3 years down the road, right? Yeah. So the vision is about what's going to happen in the next 3 years. Then the calendar and the energy are landmarks for what we're going to do each day. We're going to create rituals towards the big success, because another one of our mantras is rituals equal results, right? So we can be brushing our teeth every day. That's not a ritual. For most of us, that's a habit. We don't get any better at it. We just do it because we're supposed to, right? If we were to consciously participate in the ritual of brushing, something about us would change. Something about that action would change us, right? So we're thinking about how we put rituals onto the calendar to create success.
That makes sense. So the idea of the difference between habits and rituals. Also, one other question about the habits, the dream building session. Is it, I guess, how is it structured? Is it a cohort that joins you, etc.?
Yes.
And
So for the Dream Builder courses, we do cohorts. So the cohort that's going to start next week is for Dream Building for Artists. And if there's anyone here who's watching who wants to join, jump on over to info@lifestepsandstages.com/workshops, and you can register for this new cohort that's starting. We will be meeting Mondays in October from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and each session is 2 hours. So within that 2 hours, you're not only working through the dream building methodology with me as your coach, but you're also hearing and learning from artists who are in different mediums, different locations, at different stages in their career, and really building that network that will allow you to leverage community outside of the course, which then gives you that built-in partner in believing, is what we call it, right? So when you leave the cohort, you've come in as strangers, but you've built a kind of understanding together that will allow you to support each other outside of the course.
that's awesome. And where do you think that people find the most use in these dream building courses? Is it in the relationships? Is it in their own lessons? What type of, I guess, value propositions, if I may use the mid-core terminology, do you think
Yeah, and we talk
that
about,
they may
we
receive?
do value propositions in dream building for artists too, exactly, because who is the art for, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so I would say, Milton, that I think it's a little bit of both. I think hearing
Yeah,
other people's stories and knowing that you're not alone in your discomfort or in the gap that you're trying to navigate gives people a lot of community connection. But I do think that that personal courage of articulating to a group what it is you would love, who your art is for, what
yeah,
you're doing, why you're doing it, then gives it fuels the passion and the purpose of the individual to take the next step right out of the gate. And there's, we don't call it homework, we call it life work. That every day, every time we leave the course from week to week, there's something to
right.
do. Check back in with the cohort about your progress.
I think that's a terminology that actually makes sense. It's not homework; it's life work.
Yeah.
This last section of our conversation is sort of taking a step back a little bit and sort of looking at life, the sort of the big questions. And we talk about it as so like the first part was about the being, who is Christal Brown and what got her to where she is. Then the doing, what she's doing with dream building and visions. Now it's about sort of how do you sustain and how do you live in the moment, and what do you think is the most valuable lessons you've gotten. So I'll start with this question: what do you think is success? How do you define it? And for artists specifically, what do you think a good metric would be?
That's a really great question, Milton. And part of one of the things that I think is a key to my learning and my coaching and the work that I do is I love to listen. And so about,
Yeah,
a couple of questions back, you mentioned this idea of this finite life. And so one of my coaches, her name is Kirsten Wells. She's a energy medicine expert. And so she talks a lot about if we take a line from right to left and one end is our birth date and the other date is our departure date, and we're getting these passport stamps all along the way about what we're doing and where we're going. And we think about that as our human life, right? The level of fact, this
yeah,
body, this hair, this thing that we're in. And then we draw a line up from the bottom to the top, and that's our spiritual life, right?
yeah,
And so the only place we can ever be is at the intersection of those two things, and that's the present moment. And so when we define success in each moment, rather than trying to look towards the end goal so far or look way back in regret, then we've actually given ourselves permission to just relax and appreciate things. And that doesn't mean that we're complacent, right? So I don't want to,
right.
this is not that way that we're talking about mindfulness as like the nirvana. This is taking a moment to really say to yourself, in this moment, here is what I would like to happen. Here is who I would like to be, not necessarily what I would like to do. And in this trajectory, I'm going to acknowledge that there are things happening around me. There are people entering this moment from very different backgrounds, and I'm going to decide how I navigate this moment. And so for me, working on that type of mindset day by day, moment by moment, becomes how I see success. Because if I can be the narrator, if I can increase my awareness of myself and what I'm doing in each moment, then I become the narrator. And these moments are not just moments. These moments are going to equal hours. They're going to equal days. They're going to equal weeks, months. And eventually these moments are my life, so that when I look back, there's no regret. And when I look forward, there's only anticipation. Right? So really finding that level of self-awareness that you talked about earlier, and being able to notice in the moment that you're creating something, and to be mindful of what you want to create, whether that if you want to be in an argument, create an argument. You're the creator. If you want to have a day where you just stay in the bed with the covers over your head, that's fine too. You're the narrator. You're creating that. But we have to take ownership of it, right? And so a lot of times you also ask, what's coming in from the outside world. Sometimes in that moment of becoming the narrator, you get to shut things out. You get to not participate because it's not the moment you want to create right then, right? Or you get to open up to new people, new ways of thinking. You get to pull in information that's going to allow you to grow in that moment. But at the same time, your success is built on the results of all these moments. So success would really be creating the right moment.
I love that. I'll ask you, are there any questions that I haven't asked that I should have asked in terms of this conversation that you think might add, or any comments that you might sort of want to add before sort of might open it up to people to ask questions?
I don't know if there's anything you should have asked. I try not to live in the world of should, but I'm open to anything. So let the people ask.
Okay. So let's see, Jose, do you have any questions, or would you? So for people who haven't met Jose, Jose's my brother, and he's an amazing singer, and he's had quite a trajectory in both business and music. So I think he might have some comments or thoughts. Jose, are you there? And are there any questions?
Hey, Christal. Well, just one question. It's about confidence. How can we get when we, as an artist, it's like a roller coaster. So sometimes we're doing really, really well, and then when things don't go the way you wanted things to go, how can you get out of that, and how can you get that confidence back?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jose. I think the confidence is about not proficiency, but it goes back to that idea of purpose. And so, I make this joke all the time, but it's not really a joke. It really is true. I've been a professional dancer for 20 some years. I've never been able to do a split, maybe for like 2 minutes of my life. Right. But it's something that it's one of those things that it's an achievement thing. It's like what we just said. Is there another question you should have asked? It seems like something I should be able to do. And so when we're defining ourselves as artists and really creating what we think our gift and talent is for and what it should be used for, then Jose, I think that confidence builds in us because we're not comparing what we're doing to what someone else is doing. We're not comparing it to an industry standard. We're knowing that the magic that we're conjuring is for a particular purpose. And if it doesn't meet someone else's expectation, then it doesn't decrease the value of what we have to share.
Right. Okay. Thank you. There's another question from Lorena Acuna. She says, can you name women that inspires you?
Yeah.
What you do?
Yeah. If you go to christalbrown.com/shop, you're going to see this t-shirt that says Oprah is my spirit animal. And so Oprah kind of inspires me, but it's not for some people they go, oh yeah, Oprah, whatever. But it's Oprah the person, but it's really Oprah the metaphor. Because Oprah the metaphor is a metaphor for increasing capacity and sharing a gift through as many mediums as you can to get to people, right? It's not about her and, you know, who she is. She's a great person. I mean, yeah, Oprah, if you're there, call me. I want to hang out. But the other part is that she's used her gift, her real vocari, her real thing, that not just the way that it's shown out in the world, but she's used the thing that she loves and put it in as many different mediums as it can fit, or to expand her purpose in the world. So Oprah is one. I have many different mentors who are women who have helped me realize my own trajectory. Liz Lerman is one of them. She's a MacArthur Fellow. She's one of the first people who allowed me to be all my parts at once without trying to narrow me into one thing. Donna Faye Birchfield, who is a dear mentor. Jale Willa Jozala, the director of Urban Bush Women. B.B. Miller, you know, Andrea Woods, all of these women who have kind of shown up in my life, my mother, you know, all of these women who've shown up in my life when I really wasn't ready for the lesson, but taught me anyway, right? And so I think when we're looking for mentors, sometimes we're looking for something that looks like the perfection of what we're going for, but sometimes we need to notice that there are people who are around us who are teaching us at every stand who we're supposed to be and how to do that without discarding where we are as not ready yet, right? One of the women who actually got me to Middlebury College, her name is Penny Campbell, an amazing mentor who has always taught me how to navigate without acquiescing or devaluing what it is I believe in.
I love it. All right, so I think we've just about ended here, but as you guys saw there's the Dream Builders series, and Christal Brown, how can we find you? How can people find you in their social media, etc.?
Yeah, stay in touch, please. I love to connect with people. So lifestepsandstages.com is where you'll find free webinars to watch or how to register for courses. And then you can follow me on all socials at Life Steps and Stages, or you can follow Brown Girl Dance on Instagram as well, and on LinkedIn and Twitter. So look forward to seeing some of you guys in the class. There are a couple performances coming up, and there are ways to be a part of the family. We're going to send Jose and Milton some unmuted t-shirts, but you can get your own unmuted t-shirt at christalbrown.com/shop. If you're a dancer and you're interested in the Liquid String training module, it's also there for a digital download. And we just want you to be a part of the family, because we want to build this community of people who are thinking past the moment and building the dreams we would really love to live.
Christal Brown, you're impressive, and we're really grateful that you've joined us, and we wish you all the best. Move Emotion is here for you, but we're also, I think we're hoping to have you join our community as well, because I was telling her that the way she moves, I think it embodies how what we want to do as an organization. She moves with emotion. So everybody go follow her, look at her videos, go do every course. I really hope to see you again, Christal. Thank you.
Thank you, Milton. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.